Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today I'm going to talk about why I think the success of the Captain Marvel movie is going to be really good for Marvel Comics and the production of good Marvel comics moving forward. And if the quote-unquote progressive people get their way and the next Captain Marvel movie has Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, in it, I think that will be even better for comics. Now, I can just hear a couple of you who normally listen to my channel thinking to yourself, RJ, did you hit your head? Is there something wrong? No, actually, I do believe that this is going to be the case. And I'm going to lay out my case for you as to why I believe this is going to happen moving forward. So there are two things that got me thinking about this. Number one was the idea of get woke, go broke. Now, I've been thinking about this for a couple of months now, and it seems to me, quite honestly, that the idea of get woke, go broke, it's based upon the basic economic principle that you don't produce a product that isn't going to sell, that costs you money. If you do that, you're simply going to go out of business. But that works for a normal company. I don't think that that structure is going to work on any major large company like Disney, one of your mega companies. This simply will not hold for these mega companies. You cannot make Disney go broke. It's just not going to happen. So Disney can produce products like Marvel Comics that actually don't make money, and they have no problem doing that. But if we look at that and say, well, okay, Disney isn't going to go broke, and they can produce these products that don't really make any money, the question becomes why they produce these products. Now, I have held this since the beginning of my channel. I would assert that the reason why they're putting out Marvel Comics, which don't make money, is because these comics are not actually a product themselves. What these comics are an advertisement. All right, so we all know that advertising costs money. So they're putting money into advertising, and these comics are simply advertising. They're not products themselves, so they're not looking really to make money with these products because, again, they're not products. They're part of advertising. Now, we know that Disney employs a multi-platform advertising campaign with its sales, and Marvel has made itself part of this. By declaring itself a lifestyle brand, they were declaring themselves to be a company that employs multi-platform advertising campaigns because, in part, that's what lifestyle branding is. And I would say that Marvel itself is simply one of the platforms of Disney's larger multi-platform advertising campaigns. Now, again, the question becomes, what exactly is Disney trying to advertise through Marvel? Is it trying to advertise the movies? Well, I would say not quite. Because if you look at the sales and say, well, they're not actually putting these things out, no one's actually buying them, why would it be advertising? Well, in part, I would say it would be for the movies. But to a greater part, it would be something completely different. Now, again, this would go back to an economic principle that has held for the last, I'd say 30 years. That advertisers understand that people are emotional buyers. Now, before that 30 years, you had economists, and they simply thought to themselves that people were rational buyers. That they took their money, they calculated how much they could buy with it and what their best buy would be, and used all of those rational moves to get themselves the best for their dollar. But when they started to study this, they found out that no, this is not actually the case. People are really just emotional buyers. And now they understand and have enough evidence to show that, yes, people are emotional buyers. They buy things emotionally. So the thing is that for a smaller company, they would say to themselves, okay, people buy things emotionally. Then we have to connect our customers with our product through an emotional tie. So that's what a normal small company would do. But for these mega companies like Disney, I don't think that is what they're doing. They might do that in part, but I would say they are taking this and putting it on steroids. And what they are doing is saying, look, we have so much money, we have so much influence over the market itself that what we are going to do is not connect our audience with our product through emotion. No, we're going to take the entire audience base itself and move it farther and farther towards being emotional, and that way it will be easier and easier to sell them our product. Because, of course, we look at Disney, and that's all they've been doing for a number of years. They just use things like nostalgia. They tug at their heartstrings so they get their people to emotionally snatch up all of this content that they put out there. And this content doesn't have any real substance behind it. It's just a bunch of tripe. Because, of course, if you're going to put substance behind something, that costs money because you have to have people make that substance. You have to get them to work on this project to make it so substantial, and that decreases their bottom line. So they don't want to put out anything with substance. They want to put out this tripe that people respond to emotionally, and then they just snatch it up and buy it. And again, what I'm asserting is that Disney, with its entire company, is simply trying to move the entire customer base to a more and more emotional state. And that's what they're doing with their advertising. Now, if we look at it that way, some of the things going on at Marvel actually make sense. If you look at Marvel Comics, for the last 6 to 8 years at the very least, they have been promoting this idea of women in comics. Women buy comics. Women have always been here in comics and should buy comics and all of this other stuff. Just promoting it all over the place. Now, why would they be doing this? Well, I'm sure a couple of you will disagree with me on this, but I would say most of you would probably agree that if you look at men and women, there is a difference between the two. And women are typically more emotional than men. Now, I know this certainly isn't true in every case, but on the whole, women are more emotional than men. So, if you're trying to move your entire customer base to a more emotional state, you should concentrate on the half of the population who are more emotional, which are the females. And if you look at Marvel Comics, this is what they've been trying to do. I covered a podcast just a couple of weeks ago where you had these representatives of Marvel talking about how women have always been in comics and how they're trying to redress the balance by getting women back into comics. And they've been pushing this in podcast after podcast, on article after article. Everywhere is Marvel pushing this. You have a podcast that just came out last week where you had Hasbro and Marvel teaming up to create these creepy little dolls of Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, Squirrel Girl, America Chavez, and they're directed towards girls. You have the whole Marvel Rising initiative, and I call it an initiative because it has shorts on the internet, it has a movie on the Disney Channel, it has comics, it has a whole bunch of toys. This entire thing is based around girls. You had Court Lane, who is the VP of, I think, Animation and Family Entertainment over at Disney, saying that they chose their animation company based on the fact that they could put more detail into the hair and the eyes because that's what girls were looking for. And when they had a test audience for their movie, they had a test audience of girls. So over at Marvel, they've been trying to get women and girls into the comic sphere for at least 6 to 8 years now, and they've been pushing this solid. Now, why would they be pushing this? Well, of course, they're pushing this because they're using the comics as part of their advertising to move the entire customer base to a more emotional state, and they do that by concentrating on the more emotional people out there, which is the half of the population which are female. And further, this is why they are having Marvel Comics put out this quote-unquote progressive agenda all over the place. Why? Because these progressive ideologies are simply based upon emotion. They don't even try to hide it anymore on the other side. There was a major academic paper, I think it was, that came out, at least 5 years ago, saying, we have to stop thinking in a rational way. We have to turn society so that they make their decisions based upon emotions, not upon reason. This is what this quote-unquote progressive agenda is pushing everywhere. And if you look at what they're pushing in Marvel Comics, well, they're pushing radical feminism. Why? Well, you got to take those females and you got to drive them even more towards an emotional state. And how do you do that? Well, you do that through radical feminism. You look at all the stuff being pushed upon men and boys. What is it for? Well, it's to feminize the men and the boys. Why? Because you got to make them more like women. Why? Because women are more emotional. And this really is the heart of what they're trying to do, because Disney is able to sell to the females with their Disney princesses, but they can't sell Disney princesses to the boys or to the men, so they need an equivalent. So now they have the Marvel Universe and the Marvel characters. Those are going to be the equivalent for boys and men of the Disney princesses. And so to move the entire market towards a more emotional state, this will help sell these Marvel characters to these boys and men, and to some extent Now, the thing is that for Marvel Comics, they had two main characters that were promoting this progressive agenda, that were the champions of this agenda. And number one would be Captain Marvel, and number two would be Miss Marvel. Now, we can see from these numbers that I've just gone over that Miss Marvel really never sold well at all, except for that number one issue that they overshipped and they had multiple covers on. It never sold well at all. So again, why would Marvel be putting out this comic that never sells and have rebooted it now twice and keep on putting this comic out there? Why would they do that? Well, because Marvel, again, is not producing a product to sell the product. They are a wing of Disney that is simply being used for advertising, and this character, again, is their second tier of promoting this agenda, right after Captain Marvel. And so they have to keep on pumping this thing out there in order to promote this agenda, in order to move people more towards an emotional state. And the thing is that they're not just promoting this character within this failing book itself. They're promoting this character all over the place, because you have Kamala Khan. She's the leader of the champions. She's in crossovers with the Young Avengers, with Squirrel Girl, with Spider-Man. And this whole Marvel Rising initiative that I talked about previously, this entire thing, as stated by Marvel, was built around this character of Miss Marvel. The entire show and the entire cast of this show was all built to fit around Miss Marvel as the center of the entire thing. So they are promoting this character again and again and again in multiple ways, in multiple platforms, because this character that doesn't sell and that nobody wants to see, and they're not making money off of. Again, why? Because this character is their second tier of promoting this agenda. Now, let's move on to try to answer the question that I talked about at the first. Why is the success of the Captain Marvel movie good for Marvel Comics? And if they put this character, Miss Marvel, into the movies, why is it going to be even better for Marvel Comics? Well, I would say there are two reasons why. Number one, because, again, if we look at economics and the way Disney deals with things, even though it's a mega corporation, they're going to produce their product of advertising in the best way that they can. If you're a small company and you have two products, one that is not doing well and another that is doing spectacularly well, you're going to say to yourself, okay, we'll cancel this one that's not doing well and we'll concentrate on the one that is doing well, and we'll put all our money into that because we'll make more of a profit. So if Disney is using Marvel Comics as simply part of a multi-platform advertising campaign, and these characters are put into a larger venue where they can promote this agenda even better, then why in the world would they give any more attention to Marvel Comics? Because, of course, we already see that Captain Marvel and her progressive agenda has moved into the movies. And it appears that many people, Marvel included, want to see Kamala Khan move either into a television show or into the movies. You even have Brie Larson saying that she would really like to have Kamala Khan in the next Captain Marvel movie. So I would say there is a really good chance that she is going to be moved first into a television show and then into the movies. This is what is going to happen with this character. So if you have this character moving onto a bigger platform, that is a bigger platform that Disney can use to put out this progressive agenda. And so Marvel Comics will become, in some sense, obsolete for their effort to try to move the entire customer base more towards an emotional state. It will simply become irrelevant. And further, number two, if we look at the people who have this progressive agenda over at Marvel Comics, we see them jumping ship all of the time. We see them saying, well, look, I was only here at Marvel Comics as a stepping stone because I want to promote my agenda, and I can do that much better in movies and in television, and since I got an offer to do it in television, I'm moving on. And it's very easy to see why these people would do this. Because again, these quote-unquote progressive ideologies, they center around power. And so if you're going to give these people more power and a bigger soapbox through television and movies to promote their progressive agenda, then they're simply going to move on to this bigger venue and put out their agenda there. Now, I would say they're probably going to still have to produce some good television and some good movies in order to keep their audience, but they will have this strain, this progressive strain going through them with a television show, I would say, for Miss Marvel and the movies for Captain Marvel, and they're going to continue to use them as advertising tools to push the entire audience more towards an emotional state. But the thing is that Marvel Comics is going to become a sinking ship. And we all know that rats flee a sinking ship. And if the ship of Marvel Comics is going to start to sink, these people who promote this progressive agenda, these rats, are going to jump ship. Especially if Disney doesn't pay much attention to Marvel Comics anymore, and thus takes away their megaphone to put this progressive agenda out there. And if we extend the analogy even further, most people are not going to stay with the sinking ship either. Most people are going to abandon Marvel Comics. The only people who typically stay with a ship when it's sinking is those people who have a sense of duty. And if we're using comics to symbolize a ship and it's going to be sinking, who are the people that have a duty towards comics, that feel that they have a duty towards comics? Well, they would be the people who truly love comics as a medium, who truly love the story and the art of this medium of comics. And if all the other people jump ship and all you have left at Marvel is these people who truly love the medium, then you are going to get a product that is going to go back to that great storytelling that comics deserves. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.